Enough for me. Can we give a huge cheer and round of applause for Warwick Davis, who's going to come and talk to us about Motcombe Baths?
Usually I have to apologise because, as Tim says, people see my name up there and expect to see the Hollywood guy, and it's so sad to see everybody's disappointed faces in our time. So I'll try and make it as entertaining as obviously he would have done. So you might be asking yourself, and I'm certainly asking myself, why am I here? So I wrote 2 books about the history of Eastbourne in lockdown and all that kind of thing, and somebody very kindly bought one, and well, actually they didn't, they borrowed it from the library, but there are discounted book copies available, and they read it, and they read a bit about Motcombe Baths, and they asked me to join the community interest company who are trying to renovate the baths. So I went along, and there didn't seem to be any history of how Motcombe Baths came to be. So I wrote one, and that developed into the presentation today. So my quizzes aren't anywhere near as interesting and as exciting as Tim's, but I'll just ask you a couple of questions. Now don't panic, you don't have to actually answer them, I'll answer them for you. I hope I've got to be right. Have you got hot plumbed water in your house? Probably have. Have you got at least one bath or a shower in your house? Apparently somebody in Montecito's got 16, which seems a bit over the top. But have you got at least one? And have you got between 5 and 10 children in your house? Probably if you have got 10 children in your house, that's why you're here tonight. So I would suggest, if I asked you those questions now, there'd be yes, yes and no. If I'd asked you those questions 150 years ago, there'd have been no, no, yes. And that gave everybody a bit of a problem when it came to cleanliness. Which was a shame, because cleanliness, then, as it is now, is next to godliness. There wasn't much cleanliness going on back then, so there probably wasn't much godliness going on. So God was probably having a bit of a quiet time. But it did lead to a problem about how do you get people clean? And that was generally the solution. Somebody was sitting in their little bath, tin bath hanging on the scullery door. Now, that would have to be filled with buckets of water, either taken perhaps from a cold water tap if you were really lucky, or from a hand pump or a well, or the stream. And this guy's got quite a lot of water in there, so there must be a lot of buckets of water. Presumably most of them are going to be cold with the odd hot one chucked in, but that's going to have to be heated up. So that was the solution. Dad would go first, then Mum, and by the time you got to kid number 10, the kid number 10 would probably come out dirtier than they went in. So to get around this, the government came up with a good idea. They're going to encourage everybody, councils, local boards, whatever, to provide baths and wash houses for the population. Unfortunately, it was only a recommendation. Now, in Eastbourne there already were baths, plenty of baths, and plenty of different variety of baths. Some of them were a bit slow. I've got a pointer, but I've only got 2 hands. I can't use a pointer in. But this one always seemed a little bit worrisome to me. It was claimed to be painless. I don't want any doubt about a bath being painless or not. It's got to be not painless. And you became warm and you sweated with increased heart rate. I'll bet you did, because if they hadn't wired that up, right, that was going to be like an electric chair on an electric bath. Anyway, point is, there were loads of bars, but they were phenomenally expensive. Okay, so half a crown don't seem 2 and 6, doesn't seem much these days. But when you're only earning 20, 30, 40 pounds a year, and you've got a family of 12, it's expensive. So there were lots, but they were very expensive. Lots of places did jump into it and got going quite quickly with having public wash houses and bars. Eastbourne was a little bit slower, and if you read anything about Eastbourne history, there were enormous arguments about whether you're going to do anything. If you're going to cross the road, there was a big debate about it. I'm sure if there was a fire, should we put water on it? Do we want to let it burn? Anyway, there was lots of discussions about it, and there were with this. One of the ideas was, what do people need a bath? There's the sea. You can go and bathe in the sea. If you imagine you're going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning on a January morning, are you really going to go down to the sea, plunge in and have a nice wash in the baths? No, I don't think so. The other argument was, well, nobody's bothered to bath before. Why should they bother now? Seaside had already got baths, and they were always running a bit over budget, and they were spending 16 shillings a week on electricity. And there was lots of arguments. It's far too much. If we're going to have it at all, then it will go back to gas. And there was a worry, certainly from one councillor, that if you're going to build some bars, you might build a laundry as well. And we can't have a laundry up there, because all that's going to happen then is that ladies of the house will be gathering up their laundry, they'll be going off to the laundry, and they'll be sitting there all day having a nice chat, not cleaning the house and not having a gentleman's dinner ready when you got home. It was a slightly different world in those days. But the pros, too far from the sea. Even if you were going to go 6 o'clock in the morning and have a nice bath in the sea on a January morning, it was considered too far. And also the bars would be beneficial to the working population. It would actually be beneficial to anybody. If you were sitting in here and nobody had a bar for a couple of years, the one person that had might find it beneficial if everybody had. And the current bars that were available were too expensive, so these are sort of average salaries advertised in the paper per year. So if you're having a bath at 2 and 6 pence and you've got a family of 12, you're not going to have one every week. So the proposal to build slip bars in the Old Town was eventually accepted, and in 1905, 51 years, don't rush these things, after the Act, Old Town actually had some corporation bars. Now, to be fair to the local board, 1902, there were bars opened in Seaside. Now we've got some bars. Even if you haven't bathed before, now you can. And even if you have bathed, now you can bathe more often, because it's dead cheap. And that's what slip bars kind of look like. This isn't a picture of the Old Town ones. But everybody's probably familiar with slipper bars because they're very trendy these days. A freestanding bar, roll top, and have a towel draped over it to protect your modesty. Apart from the curtains that go around it as well. So what does it look like? Well, at Motcombe there are 12 slipper bars for men and 3 for ladies. Don't quite know who did the design, but I'm betting it was a bloke. Presumably, the best you could say is probably because men are much dirtier than women. Perhaps they worked harder. That in case somebody throws anything. Perhaps they took longer in the bars, and perhaps women are a bit quicker going through them. Quite decent-sized cubicles, although there were still complaints, because there's always complaints about everything, isn't there? That if you hang up your clothes inside the cubicle, they got wet. Well, just be a bit more careful. There was a waiting room for men. Pause. Presumably if there's only 3 bars for women, you'd have thought there'd been a big queue, but perhaps women are much more efficient at getting through them. There were also other facilities as well, and they were considered the most modern and up-to-date bars in the country. I don't know whether that was the people that built them said that, or who, but there's discussion. But of course there was controversy, because in Motcombe there were more public bars than there were in Seaside, despite the fact that Seaside had a bigger catchment area. So that was an area for annoyance. Initially they thought that the bars would pay for themselves, and they were very, very much cheaper. You can see 2pence, 4pence for a bath, which is a bit more manageable for people. But they kept trying to put the prices up, and it was suggested that one letter was sent into the newspaper saying that prices have gone up. So this man and his family were now, instead of going every week, they were going to go every 3 weeks to have a bath. Great. One of the issues was that because of the cost of it, and because there was so much unemployment, that it was still potentially too expensive for people, it should become a social service. It should be free. And the comparison was, you can park a car for free, so why can't you have a bath for free? I'm not quite sure what the comparisons were that were there, but any port in a storm, in an argument. If people didn't use the bars, eventually there was the Verminous Persons Act, which sounds pretty horrible to me. But if you were verminous seemed to me to be rats and mice, but people say, well, no, perhaps more like lice and stuff like that. Anything that crawls around is pretty disgusting. Anyway, if you were of that ilk, you could be dragged off and formally de-shirted. I'm not quite sure what formally de-shirted is, or just have it wrenched off your back. But it does suggest that even though there are 12 bars for men, they're not using them. So, formally de-shirting and so used in a public bath. Probably recognise a couple of the examples of the soaps still around now. One that's still not, that isn't around now is this one, radium soap. Here, Madame Curie with a discovery of radium. Everybody had to have radium in everything, and it was in soap. Presumably it was quite handy if the bathroom was dark, because you could find it quite easily. On the other hand, do you remember the Ready Brack adverts, when the kids let the Ready Brack and they came out and they were glowing? Perhaps if you rub yourself down with that, you also would glow in the dark. Needless to say, it wasn't on the market for long. It's no good going to Sainsbury's, they haven't got it. Even Waitrose haven't got it now. So, did people use it? Did people want to use it? Oh, blimey, not half. The statistics suggest that a lot of people were using it. You can see that 3 times as many people were using seaside bars as Motcombe Baths, despite the fact they had fewer bars. And the trumpet was that 1,000 people a week were using it. Well, 1,000 people a week, when you've got 40,000 people, how many were actually really using it? It was being used quite a lot, but was everybody using it? Doesn't look like it. But by the 50s, we started getting more and more houses with bathrooms in. So the demand for the public baths started going down, and eventually the bars at Motcombe were removed, and they were replaced with the changing rooms. So there are no longer any public baths. But what they were thinking about having the slipper bars, I thought, what about having a swimming pool? Now, quite why they didn't have a swimming pool down in Seaside, presumably because it is closer to the sea, I don't know, but what about having a swimming pool here? Well, no, you can't do that. Far too expensive. Going to cost £5,000 to go in the ground, swimming. Don't really want that. And then there's the capital costs. Got a 45,000 gallon pool, and it's going to cost £2 every time we fill it up. Can't have that. Because there was no flow through, it was filled up, and then after a while it was emptied, and then it was filled up again. And then, of course, there was a salary, £90 for a husband and wife caretaker team. After about 1913, there was a house built next to the pool for the caretaker to live in. £75 for coal, if you could get it. So what were the pros? Well, it's very tenuous when everybody could join, all the lads could join the Naval Reserve, and now they could swim. Only, was it five of the kids could swim at one school? I don't know how many people couldn't swim in Eastbourne, but I suspect it was quite a large number. Even with all the bathing huts, it was generally recognised that men would go swimming, women would go to the hut and bob around in water and not swim. Anyway, it's far too far away. What if people didn't come? Well, what we can do, says the council corporation, is we can buy one of these, and we can bus people in from all over the town. Had an extra benefit because you could advertise in bars, but also I'm pretty sure there was no hairdryers in the bars when they were first built. But if you sat on the top deck, let the wind rush through your hair, it could dry off on the way home. Snag was, it only did 8 miles an hour at best. So we might have to go around a few times before we actually tried. So it was decided, yes, despite the cost, we're going to build this pool, and it's going to be great. And of course it was. Victorians were really good at building things. Lots of curved edges to keep it clean. 19 changing rooms, cubicles down each side. It was great. And it wasn't going to be jerry built. It was going to be a quality building. Sure enough it was. And that's it now, without the changing cubicles down the sides. That's a really grotty picture of the changing cubicles. Now they said that it was all tiled because it was kept really nice and clean. To me, that doesn't look terribly clean. Hey ho. Okay, so now one of the problems was, as I said, there was no water flowing through, so it filled up. Everybody went swimming for a couple of days in it, and it started getting a bit brown. You wonder how many people went to the swimming pool rather than go into the baths. The changing cubicles were right next to the pool, so you could get in there, whip all your vermin his clothing off, get into the pool, have a little swim, turn the water brown. If you were going swimming, best to go the day or the few hours when the water was fresh. Don't go 2 days, 3 days later. You could probably walk across the surface of it. And sure enough, loads of infections. And slightly worrying, medical officers were, what do you expect? You've got this big pool of water and you've got these mucky people in there. And I call it microbiological soup. And I kind of compare it to hot tubs these days, unless they're cleaned out really thoroughly. Not only brown, but you can have blue water as well. This is slightly more upbeat. When people were a bit cheesed off, feeling a bit blue, they go in, have a swim around, and all the blueness dissolves out of them, and the water becomes blue. And also, it's a place to study laughter, because everybody's having such a good time. And if that's not two ways to sell a place, then surely there's no other better ways. Did they come? Sure they did. Loads would come. But then they went away again. In the war, the bars were closed down. Perhaps in 1915 people had other things on their minds, but they weren't going. But it was used as a community resource, and that's one of the things the CIC are looking for now, is to change it into not just a pool, but a big community resource. They probably won't be doing gas masks anymore. They did have a phone there, which had to be whipped out as well, because most people were going in to use the phone rather than the swimming pool. Now, I presume it was a pay phone, but they were using it far more often than the people that worked there. So that was taken out and moved next door. Who's going to use it? Schools used it loads and loads and loads. Schools used it. It was really popular, as well as ordinary people in swim, of course. And they really wanted children to swim. Health and safety crept in. I don't think there was anybody with a clipboard and stopwatch, but anyway, health and safety kept in, and they were trying to flog off life-saving courses. And if you went to a life-saving course, you also had a demonstration of ornamental swimming, which seemed a bit weird, but it was synchronised swimming at the time. Ladies were especially attracted to go. It was 72 degrees, so nice and warm, so no excuse. It's slightly more worrying that it was suggested that ladies who did not learn to swim, were a danger to others. You're not quite sure how, but there we are. Willowfield School was one of the big users of the thing, and I distinctly remember when I did my swimming badges, that's what I had to do. Now, fortunately, Willowfield isn't that old. Unfortunately, I am, but anyway. They were very keen. But even the council wanted to get in on it, and they had big presentation sessions when people learn to swim at the pool. Like I said, one of the big pools was at Devonshire Park, and they were very innovative in what they used to do. And these were two of the games they had in some of the regattas they had. So swimming with an open umbrella. They weren't really particularly specific about whether they were swimming with the umbrella up and you had to hold it, or whether it was upside down in the water and you had to push it. Either way, it was a bit weird, but not as weird as the other one, where you had to push a lighted candle, which was presumably on some sort of cork float. And if it went out, you were out. I haven't seen any of the Olympic Games since, so I presume no. But the gas company, Athletic and Sports Club, they also went there, and they had to give people tarpaulins to put over themselves. You know, like the sea life centres and that in Florida, where they have the splash area where the whales come out and they splash everybody. Here, the gas company had to give everybody tarpaulins to put over their legs, because when they were getting splashed from all the swimming that was going on. They're not very good swimmers with all the water's coming out. So, was it used for anything else? Yeah, loads of it. Lots of things. And particularly the orthopaedic rehabilitation, which is still being used now, or was when it was open. Water polo was very, very popular down there, and when one time they had the lights went out, and they put candles on the goalposts, so you carry on playing water polo in the dark. They're really thoughtful. So that's what I'm really after, your interest, and try and get everybody behind the Community Interest Company to try and get the interest up, so that we apply for money from various bods to refurbish the pool and bring it up to date. They've got lots of good ideas about what to do with it. Not only the pool itself, but also the house next door, where they want to do like a wellness centre. So that's it. Sorry.